Today's conversation is with Lee Hazard from Strong and Conditioned, an out-of-the-box thinker. We talk about burpees, what it means to be conditioned, and cheat meals. All right, so I want to kick things off by talking about the beginning of your burpee journey, following mythical strength on Reddit and ultimately finding out about Iron Wolf. You mentioned the transformative power of burpees. Can you explain that in detail?
Well, I'll make a good fucking go of it. Right, so I'll talk about where it began. And for me, it happened during the lockdown period. And during that time, I found myself having no access to fitness with regards to getting to a gym. And that was a big obstacle for me because I had always trained in gyms. I had never trained in the house. I had never had a home gym at any point. Calisthenics or bodyweight training was something that never really interested me because I was locked into that mindset that weights were the be all and end all of training. I was very dogmatic, like incredibly dogmatic about training. And my response to that was to just stop training. And it was the first time I had stopped training for around 20, 21 years. I'd always trained consistently. And I found this period where for 6 months, I did absolutely nothing. I never trained at all. And for the first couple of months, I actually enjoyed it because I didn't have that stress of having to train, that neurotic behavior that starts to rear its ugly head when you do train and you do not have access to a facility. You start to get all in your head and you get that FOMO or FOMO sensation, which they talk about nowadays. So I just found myself eating chocolate every night, eating croissants, just eating cakes, takeaways, and I put on an incredible amount of weight. I was actually shocked at the amount of weight I put on. And I went on holiday and a photo was taken of me and I looked absolutely horrific. And what happened was when I got back, I thought I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to just get back to the gym. So I gained access to a gym. One of my friends owns a gym and he would allow me to open up and use the gym during the lockdown period. But I was kind of trying to find my feet again with training in that respect. And I was getting locked into this jumping from program to program. Nothing was really sticking. However, during that time, I would frequent the T Nation forums. And the man who you referred to there at the beginning of the question, Mythical Strength, would also post on the T Nation forums as the Punisher, Jared Miller. And I would read his log, and it was mind-blowing what he was doing. There was an excitement in his log, but what really stood out was the risk taking that he did with his training. He never really conformed to one style of training. He would do conditioning, he would do weights, but there was no convention to his style of training, and it really interested me because I've always been drawn to mavericks when it comes to training. I don't like cookie cutter stuff. I like people who think outside the box and they've got a strong belief tied into what they're doing, because I truly believe that belief in the system that you employ is the biggest driver of success. People will talk about consistency and intensity, and yeah, those do play a massive part. However, I think the belief is something that people don't really talk about. If you believe something will work, it will work, because consistency, intensity then just kind of run in sync. And he was doing burpees. And as a fitness instructor, I used to administer burpees in a fitness class. And the only reason I would get people to do burpees is because I wanted them to leave the class feeling like they had done a workout.
Okay.
Like there was no real progression or result to be gained out of the exercise. It was just to make sure they walked out of class in a certain condition, thinking that they had had a hard workout. because that was always the psychology behind a fitness class. If you leave a fitness class and you're still fresh, then you're never going to think that the class was effective. People want to walk out of class like sweating. They want to walk out of class shaking and shivering. So you would put burpees at the end because that was guaranteed. But then the burpees that you would see people doing, they were like, it looked like someone was having sex with a dolphin's head. They would just be kind of flopping about. There was no technique, but I didn't think there was a technique involved with burpees.
Okay.
So Jared Miller was doing burpees, and I thought, if Jared Miller's doing burpees, like, there must be some validity into this. But he wasn't looking at it through that lens of, he was looking at it as just, it's going to get me conditioned. So I started to do burpees. And the burpees I was doing were the conventional CrossFit style, flop to the floor, get up, a wee kind of jump that you do that you would be lucky to shove an envelope under your feet in the process. So that took me down a rabbit hole. I started to go into YouTube, as we all do when we discover something new in the training world. We go into YouTube and look for things. And I discovered the Iron Wolf. And I've always said this, but that was like a explosion going off in my head. Like there's moments in your training journey that you always remember. There's always these profound experiences where you discover something and something just like resonates and it clicks. And at this point, like fitness and YouTube was just, it was so stylish. It was so stylized. It was like guys in gyms and they're oiled up and it's fast editing and they're lifting weights. And then there was the opposite end of the spectrum, which was the Iron Wolf, which was a guy who was on an army base, or he was in a hotel room, or even a room within a army base, and he was just doing 1,000 burpees. And I thought, this is amazing. Like this just takes things to a whole new level, because there was just a raw authenticity to that style of training. Because as I got older, I started to become more detached to the whole aesthetic side of things and the posing and the like, how good does my body look? There was guys out there who were just talking about, let's just get really fit. Let's just train like really hard. Let's take the exercise, which everybody hates. Everybody hates burpees. And let's use that exercise and show how that exercise could be done. But it wasn't just the fact that he was doing the exercise itself. It was the style he was doing the exercise. It was the way it looked. It was the aesthetic of it. It was almost, it had become a craft. Like the stomach strike, no jump in the burpee. That was liberating, because I always thought you need to jump in a burpee. But when they explained it, like, you don't need to jump in a burpee, because if we jump during a burpee, then we'll do less burpees. Let's do more burpees. Let's just take the jump out of the burpees. Let's preserve the integrity of our knees and ankles. And let's focus on the push-up. Nobody does the push-up in the CrossFit burpee. It's a flop to the floor, then it's a spring back up. As these guys were emphasizing the push-up. We're doing 1 pump burpees, 2 pump burpees, 3 pumps, Navy SEALs. And there was just a look to it that just kind of mesmerized me. So I started just going down the burpee rabbit hole and just started with like 100 burpees, and 100 burpees became 200 burpees. And then you realize there was these like reference points, or these milestones, your first 100, 500, 1,000. I mean, if you ask somebody, like, would you do 1,000 burpees? They'll just look at you like you've grown 2 heads. They're not going to be receptive to that idea. But it became a challenge. And that's how I get started in the burpee game, so to speak.
Awesome. So it sounds like just the rawness of the burpees, and maybe that you didn't appreciate the amount of technique involved in it, and then your mind opened up to it and you saw that there was this long path and that it was actually a really beautiful thing, and that really drew you to it, and the fact that it could be done at home or anywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, like, that's a really good point, actually, because like the burpee that I started off with was called the one pump burpee. And the one pump burpee is just you get down, do the push up, come up quite quickly. However, then I became aware of the 6 count burpee. And the 6 count burpee, you actually count out the points of contact. So there'll be 6 points of contact, and that will make up 1 rep. And when you're doing a high volume burpee session, you're having to count. And not only you're having to count, but you're having to count every point of contact before you actually count the rep. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, and you're building up to like 500 reps. So not only are you performing a physically demanding exercise, but you're having to focus mentally on the exercise itself by maintaining the count. And when I actually spoke to Ryan Wolf, he made a very interesting point why they do that in the military, and it's to be able to memorize numbers during moments of, say, a stressful situation or where there's a lot going on. You need to be able to relay information through numbers to your fellow soldiers. And it made a lot of sense to me. So that was something that grabbed me straight away, having an exercise which not only had physical benefits, but it also had mental benefits, which allowed you to maintain a degree of focus when performing the exercise.
Yeah, I think one thing I found really interesting as I kind of dug into your channel was that you weren't just talking about optimal hypertrophy, but you were talking about balance and conditioning. So I'd love to understand maybe if the conditioning piece really resonated with you and maybe why, and why others should maybe consider conditioning as an overall piece of their fitness journey.
Well, the thing about conditioning is that, so the first point is that lifting weights doesn't really get you fit. That's just my opinion. Okay, if you just lift weights, you're going to get strong, you're going to look good, but you're not really going to get fit in the conventional sense. You're not going to build that aerobic base. You're not going to build that capacity to work anaerobically. And your conditioning will be quite poor. And case in point, I went through situations in life where I thought that my training in the gym, my lifting training would serve me well. And there was like 2 occasions where that became apparent to me that that was not the case. And the first time was when I played a game of 5-a-side football, or soccer as you call it in America. I don't know why you call it that, but it's football over here. And you're doing the weights for like 6 months and you're thinking, right, I can do anything. I can do anything. Then you would play a game of 5-a-side soccer and you would be blowing out of every single hole in your body by 5 minutes. But you were playing under the belief that weights just covered all bases. It's just idiotic thinking. It's naivety. And the second time was when I went to Finland to work with my father. My father built dry stone walls, which is really prehistoric work. And you're just basically lifting rocks all day and placing them on top of each other to create like like an old Scottish wall you would see in a farm. It's just bricks, no cement. It's just bonded. And within about 20 minutes of working with my father, I was suffering. I was suffering hard just lifting the rocks. I didn't have the capacity to work that hard because a set lasts 40, 50 seconds and you just stop when you can't lift the weight anymore. Whereas in that sense, you have to keep going. Even though you feel tired, you need to still keep making sure those rocks are still building those walls. So that's when I kind of realised, I thought, you know what, like I love weights, but it's not really hitting the spot with regards to ever getting conditioned. It doesn't work like that. And then I also thought to myself, like, weights is an activity where you always go in fresh. Like, you go to the gym and you're fresh. Like, you've slept well. You have a nice warm up. You get the foam roller out and you just roll your muscles. And then you start your session because you want to hit that PB. You want to be fresh. But life doesn't work like that. Like, when shit hits the fan, you tend to be quite fatigued. You tend to be quite tired. These things will happen. Life surprises will happen when you least expect it. So would it not make sense to work sometimes in a fatigue state? Like to go into a gym session tired from a conditioning session? I mean, that's just the way I seen it. I'm sure people may take umbrage with that, and possibly they might think it doesn't even make sense. But you need to be prepared for when shit hits the fan, and that's what conditioning is going to provide you with. If you've got a high level of conditioning, then you're creating an environment for even more growth ultimately. Because your ability to do work in the gym will increase exponentially. Your ability to recover in the gym during the workout will increase exponentially. And that was something that I found out when I focused strictly on burpees. I did burpees for 2 years straight, and I never really touched a weight at any point. And then when I went back to the gym, I noticed that my recovery periods between sets was just high. Like conventional thinking would say you need to rest 3 to 5 minutes between sets to really induce that potential for hypertrophy to make sure the muscle. But after a minute, I always felt ready to go. I thought I could go again. And I could go again because my ability to recover was so high because I was doing these ball breaking bodyweight circuits that were like 200 chin-ups, 500 press-ups, 500 squats, 100 burpees. And you're not just doing it at a leisurely rate. You're not doing a set of like 100 burpees or like, sorry, a set of 10, 20 burpees and resting 3 to 5 minutes so that you can do 10 chin-ups effectively. You're trying to do it as fast as possible. The whole point is that locomotion of work. It's constantly just grinding, going to the next exercise, minimal rest. Plus, I was doing it under the gaze of a camera. I was filming these workouts and putting them all on YouTube. So I was trying to get them done as quickly as possible. So yeah. I think that conditioning is something that's definitely overlooked. It's something that's tacked on at the end of a session for most people. Like people will go to the gym, they'll do their squats, they'll do their bodybuilding, and they think, I'm going to do some conditioning, and it'll be like a 5-minute afterthought at the end of the session. It'll be like Tabata fucking butt clenches or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to maybe just define what fitness is to you, right? If your goal is to put as much muscle mass as possible and that's your only goal, then I think just going to the gym, taking those long breaks, progressively overloading, that makes a lot of sense. But if you view fitness as, I want to be able to play sports, I want to be athletic, I want to be able to run, and I want to lift weights, and I want to be strong, then you need to kind of figure out what that piece of the puzzle looks like, right? Like, how much do you want to prioritize your gym stuff? And then, do you also want to do the conditioning work? You can look at professional athletes, right? They're pretty strong and they're also playing sports multiple times a week and doing practice, right? So what does it look like for you? I know a few years back, my conditioning wasn't great and I was playing basketball with a bunch of 20-year-olds and I was gassed after about 20 minutes. And now I make sure I do conditioning work like 2 to 3 times a week, whether it's playing a sport or something of that nature, because that's important to me as well. Even though I do want to build muscle, like they're both important. So I want to prioritize both of them in my weekly schedule.
Yeah. You've also got to factor in the fact that conditioning is fun training. There's a fun element to conditioning because if you are just doing weights, then you spend a lot of your time sitting down when you do weights. Like you do your weights, you're lying on a bench for a lot of the exercises. You're sitting on a bench, you're sitting on a machine, and then you're resting. Then you have to wait, then you go again. And now I know some people might do giant sets and try to keep the train rocking, but in a commercial gym setting, for example, sometimes that's not viable. But high rep bodyweight training, there was an excitement factor to it because you were constantly going. You were constantly going.
Awesome.
Chin up, burpees, push-ups. I mean, even today I went to the gym. I've kind of took a back seat because I've got other things going on training-wise that I'm focusing on at this point. Burpees have kind of taken a back seat in some respects. I don't do high reps anymore. I just do 100 in a day just to kind of keep me ticking over, just to practice technique. But today I just went, fuck it, I'm going to do like 100 chin-ups, 100 dips and try and do it as fast as possible. And I felt good. I thought, this is why I love this. It's just, there's a flow to it that you don't really get with conventional weightlifting. Or I don't think that you do. But.
And I think you kind of mentioned that you kind of like the Maverick style approach and not thinking inside the box. And I think you saying that, you had that time when all you were doing was kind of the high rep burpees and now you're kind of evolving. I find that to be a natural progression where your curiosity changes, something's exciting, and just kind of lean in during that time into whatever
Yeah,
that new thing is. I
yeah,
find that
yeah.
helps me stay fresh.
Yeah, you've got to like find something and throw yourself into the process. But you've got to take the tools that you learned through previous elements or previous parts of the training journey and bring them with you to the new activity. That's what I tend to find. I like you really have to like experiment in training. No one's going to train the same style. You will get the odd person who just does the weights for years, and if that's what you do, then like more power to you. I applaud your consistency. But some people, they need to change things up. They need to go, I'm just going to do it. Like I've did crazy things like during my time training. I've done cycling for like a year, just concentrating on like road biking, the burpees, a wee bit of powerlifting in here now and again, martial arts. I just throwing something completely different into the training experience. I always come back to weights. As much as I'm like, so I almost saying that weights is boring, I always come back to weights because it's always been my first love. I don't enjoy weights. I think weights is boring. I tend to find that the minute I sit down on a bench and do my first set, I think, oh, I'm so bored. I'm so bored.
That's hilarious. No,
But I do it.
when I'm on the bench, I'm excited. My heart rate's up, right? So I guess it depends on the person and that time period. But
Absolutely, absolutely. I always think to myself, I'm just pushing a weight up and down here. I was like,
for
it's
sure.
it's very static activity.
So I want to talk about the mental aspect. A few times I've heard you talk about the darkness. You mentioned like if you don't get into the darkness, you go nowhere. Can you maybe
Yeah.
just elaborate on what that means to you?
Right. Okay. Well, like the best way I can describe this to you is is do 50 burpees at some point. Right. Do 50 burpees. Because when you get to the 25th burpee, you're going to go, oh, what's happening here? Like, I don't like this. Because the first 25 burpees are always the hardest. Like, I don't care what anybody says. The first 25 are always the hardest burpees. Every burpee after that is easier. But the first 25 are always hard. But when you get to that 25 number, that's when you know, wait, am I going to stick with this? Am I going to keep going here? Because that's when the voice in your head starts to challenge you. That's when your lizard brain starts to activate and say, why the fuck are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this pointless movement? You're just burning calories. We should be collecting resources and collecting food. We need to sustain life. This isn't sustaining life. This is taking life away from the body. And that's when the darkness kicks in. That's when you go, right, this is tough.
Do you
But
know David Goggins? It sounds
yeah,
like
I've read his
it
book.
gives me some David Goggins vibes when you're saying that.
Yeah, yes, because people, it resonates with people because burpees, when performed initially, destroy people. They don't destroy them physically, but they destroy them in many ways because it's a boring exercise as well. If you're doing like 1,000 burpees, because you're just standing up and getting down on the ground and getting back up and standing up and getting back down. Like on paper, that's just stupid. So the darkness is physical, but it's mental as well because you need to grind because you think, how am I going to get to 1,000 burpees here? Like, what is the strategy that I'm going to create to get me there? How am I going to break this down into wee sets? These are the things that start consuming you. While at the same time, you're breathing with your lungs are in absolute fire. Your chest muscles, because you're doing a high volume amount of push-ups as well, your chest is killing you. Triceps are starting to burn, your shoulders are in agony. Like you do a Navy SEAL burpee, and like that, like I always look at the Navy SEAL burpee as one of those exercises you can weaponize. Like, so if you're talking to a fellow gym instructor and they're coming in and they're bumping their gums about how fit they are, like, yeah, I've done this, I've done that. You say, right, listen, do 50 Navy SEAL burpees. Now, most people don't even know what a Navy SEAL burpee is, so you have to show them. So they figure it out. And the Navy SEAL burpee requires a degree of mental coordination because there's a lot going on. But it can be easily taught. So they do their first Navy SEAL and then they do their second Navy SEAL. When you get to 10 Navy SEALs and their shoulders are on fire because it's an exercise that demands absolute perfection with the push-up. And a perfect push-up's beyond a lot of people.
Agreed.
Because like I work in gyms, and the push-up is one of those exercises that people relate to youth. Like, for example, cycling. If you've never cycled before, or if you haven't cycled since you were a child, and you decide to get a bike, you're using that bike with that childhood memory attached to it. And when we were children, we could cycle all day. Like,
All
you
day.
could just, all day, you would just go on your bike. A hill wasn't a thing when you were a child. You're like a Duracell bunny, right? You're just like a battery. But when you're an adult, right, particularly an adult who's deconditioned or they've not been doing any training of that nature, when you go on a bike and you cycle your first hill, like, you are in a world of pain. You are dying on your feet. So push-ups are the same, because we all did push-ups when we were younger. Like, when I was younger, your uncle would say to you, how many push-ups can you do? And you would just start.
Yeah, we would do that in gym class, right? You do 30 push-ups, but
Yeah,
none of them are very good, but it counts,
yeah.
so it's fine.
You're just going like a greyhound. Or, but I get guys that would come into gyms, and you would like ask them, like, can you do a push-up? And every guy would say, yeah, oh yeah, I can do a push-up. I can do a push-up. But most people couldn't do a push-up. They would fall flat on their face, and they would get up on their feet. I used to be able to do 50 push-ups.
That's funny.
And it's because they attached that childhood memory to the exercise.
For sure.
So the push-up is a difficult exercise for most people, I tend to think.
For sure, for sure. So I want to move on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some images up on the screen. I'm going to tell you who the person is, and then I want you to tell me something maybe you learned from them and what workout you would do with them in person.
Right, okay.
Cool? All right.
Cool.
So the first one is Bald Omni Man.
All right, I like Bald Omni Man. I watch a lot of his stuff. His videos are really good. His thumbnails are good as well. The kind of workout you would do with him, I think there would be a lot of bodybuilding style supersets, Larson presses, a lot of arm work in there, a lot of triceps. Probably a good pump style workout, I would say.
Awesome. All right. Next is Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Oh. I'm the world's biggest Ric Flair fan. Like,
Are you?
I'm so shocked. Ric Flair's workout would involve a lot of alcohol, and probably a lot of stories. There wouldn't be any work getting done with a Ric Flair workout. It would just be Ric Flair telling you stories about wrestling.
Would you get him to teach you the figure four leg lock at least, like in detail?
No, I would get him to teach me the Flair flop.
Oh, that's a good, yeah. The Flair flop's good.
The Flair flops would make no, but I would get him to teach me how to deliver a promo, because sometimes I find myself at night just watching Ric Flair videos, like doing old promos.
Hilarious. All right, let's move on here to Iron Wolf.
Or like, it would be a dream to work out with Iron Wolf. It would be an absolute dream. One of my life's goals. With the Iron Wolf, it would be a lot of high pump burpees. Like, I don't think it would be like a conventional one pump. He would be taking you up those 3, 4, 5 pumps, possibly past the 5 mark. Few Navy SEALs in there, but they definitely would be. You'd be walking out there with your chest completely exploding.
How long would that workout be?
How long? Probably between an hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'd like one of my favourite, like a workout people need to do at some point in their life is a Iron Wolf long card. Just watch it on YouTube. He does these long cards now and again, where it's like about 60 different exercises interspersed with like 25 burpees, and it's just done at a blistering pace. They are absolutely, they will get your fitness up to an insane level. Anybody who's watching and if they want to get fit fast, just watch the Iron Wolf. look up his long cards and his CVP workouts, and you are going to be in the best condition of your life in about 6 weeks, man. Seriously.
All right, I got to try that one out. Let's move on here. So Alex, who I know
Oh,
you had on the podcast, Alex
yeah,
Leonidas.
Alex. Alex is a great guy. I really enjoyed talking to Alex. Alex would, I think you would get a kind of more, I don't want to say power building because I know that that's a controversial term nowadays, but you would be getting a lot of calisthenics in there, a lot of behind the neck presses, just stuff of that nature, a lot of weighted chin-ups, weighted pull-ups, because the guy really knows his stuff when it comes to calisthenics. But you would also get burpees as well, because I know that Alex is a fan of the burpee.
Yeah, he does it for conditioning. I know that's what he said on your pod.
Yeah, yeah. He's been doing a few videos about it as well recently, which have been very interesting.
Yeah, I think what I like about Alex is he's very out of the box with his thinking. He's willing to try new ideas and test them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. He's quite an inspirational character, I tend to find. He puts himself out there. His YouTube channel has definitely been a journey, and you've seen the evolution of his style of training, but he's always stuck to the basics as well, which I always admire.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the last one here, I'm gonna let you pick either Arnold in Terminator, Stallone in Rocky, or Van Damme in Bloodsport. Which one do you pick and what
Oh
workout?
God, man, this is so difficult. This is so difficult, right? Because like Arnie's one of my heroes, right? I just think Arnie's a force of nature. Rocky 2, which you've got there, has actually got the best training montage, in my opinion, out of all the Rocky movies. A lot of people gravitate towards Rocky 4, Rocky 3, but I just think Rocky 2, the training montage, is there's a quality to it. Chasing the chicken, it's iconic. Bloodsport was one of my favourite movies growing up. Like I know every single line in Bloodsport, but there's no big crazy training sequence in the Bloodsport movie. The only part I can actually recollect is when he's doing the when he's getting tied for or is that kickboxer when he's getting tied to each bamboo pole and they're forcing him to do the splits.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's kickboxer. I'm getting my Van Damme movies mixed up here. I would probably go for Rocky 2. The Rocky movies I love, but that training sequence is one that I would love to do at some
So you would
point.
do the training sequence from Rocky too.
Yeah, because he's got a bit of weights in there. I think he's doing a Bradford press before anyone knew what a Bradford press was. Eh, but it's just when you see Mickey say, "What are we waiting for?" Just everything about that whole training montage is just perfection.
That's awesome. All right, so I'm gonna move things in a different direction. So as someone with a family, you touch on balancing fitness with family life, especially in the context of your dietary habits. You mentioned the importance of flexibility, going for Chinese food and getting pizza. So, what are some tips you can provide on when to be flexible with your diet and fitness and when to be rigid?
I think the only time you need to be rigid is when you've got physique goals, because diet's everything in that respect. Like if you've got physique goals, if you're wanting to look a certain way, if you want to get your abs out, then you need just to be rigid. But you can't be rigid when you have a family in some ways, because I'm of the belief that you need to instill good eating habits in your children to a certain degree. You don't want them stressing out about food. You don't want them to see dad weighing out their food constantly, measuring every gram of food. That to me is a bit neurotic. I feel neurotic when I'm actually doing that, and I'm just worried that it would probably project onto my children subconsciously. And they don't care. They just want to eat a bit of pizza now and again. They want to eat a McDonald's, and they don't want to be the dad that's sitting there thinking, right, you just eat a McDonald's. I'm going to sit here and eat a Tupperware dish of chicken. Like, where's the fun in that? You need to have, because what does it matter at the end of the day? Like, one meal's never going to cause any chaos. And I think that's some of the patterns of behavior that we get sucked into with nutrition. I think nutrition's at like a dark rabbit hole at times. I think nutrition's the one that causes the most arguments as well. People get really antsy about eating. They get really defensive about how they eat. If you look at like carnivore, vegan, people get wrapped up on how they eat. And I always think to myself, it's just food. It's just food. It's just something that you choose to do. But
we should make a video called the optimal power building and carnivore combo and really get a lot of clicks.
Well, I've actually got sucked into like the carnivore diet. Like I never thought I would, but I did. I gave it a bash, and I was quite shocked at the I don't want to say results. I was just more shocked at how I felt on the diet more than anything.
Yeah,
that was like quite a profound experience for me, because I don't like tying myself into a dogma when it comes to diet, like eating one style. But Jared Miller kind of persuaded me. He started doing it, and I always like look at Jared and go, if he's doing it, I'm going to give it a fucking bash, because he always makes it work.
Yeah,
he believes
it'll work,
and the results he was getting were phenomenal. Like the work he was putting in was insane. Yeah. So I thought, why not? And I found that it was really, really, really successful in some ways. Like it just gave you a clarity of mind. That was the one thing that stood out about it. But I would never tell people to eat carnivore, because I know people like they take it the wrong way. I would never promote it. Like I would never get evangelical about a diet. But out of all the ones I've tried, out of all the eating styles I've tried, I tend to find that carnivore was probably the easiest to follow and the cheapest for some reason. A lot of people would think it would be expensive, but I found it quite cheap.
Interesting. Yeah, I find what you were saying earlier about, just you want to eat McDonald's or eat the pizza, just go for it. One meal's not going to make a big difference. And I think that really depends on your goals. So if you're like a hardcore bodybuilder or a power lifter or a professional and you want to take every meal really seriously, go for it. But if you're a normal person who wants to be in shape, I find those shared experiences with family and friends to be really important, right? Like if I'm out with my friends and they're at a restaurant, I'm going to eat there. I'm not going to make a big deal of it.
Yeah.
If all the guys are drinking, I'm going to have a couple of drinks, even though I know it's not the greatest thing, but it's a social way that I can connect with people. And maybe it's not optimal, but we're trying to enjoy our lives here too and connect with people and build relationships.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good point, because when you think about it, people are living through that bodybuilding lens. There's a lot of people out there who will refuse these like experiences because they've got a goal, but they're not earning any money from their goal. Like a professional bodybuilder's earning money from his goal, so it makes sense that he would have to make the sacrifices in order to secure his financial future. Whereas some fucking Instagram guy, like, who's probably not making any money from it, like, what does it matter? Like, but I don't get it. I don't get it. It's not going to have any major impact on your physique. But you say the key point here is a shared experience. And this is to go back to something that Jared Miller said as well, which was the cheat meal should be renamed the family meal.
Love that.
Because you're sharing the experience with your family. Because he's eating like an absolute fucking maniac for 6 days out of the week, where he's just eating meat and eggs. That's all he's eating.
Mm-hmm.
But for 1 day of the week, he lets go. Like, he'll have pancakes or something like that. And it's with the family. It's not him sitting alone, just scoffing fucking cereal.
And I think it comes down to, who do you want to be as a person, right? Do you want, like, some people want to be that person that's hyper disciplined all the time and everyone views them as being hyper disciplined, and some people want to be viewed as more of a relaxed, fun person who's out socially having pizza with their friends. And I think it just kind of goes to, which person do you want to be? And for myself, I'm cool being disciplined behind closed doors, and then when I'm with my friends and family, I try to be a little bit more relaxed. I may still make some wiser decisions when we're at a restaurant, but it's not over the top.
Yeah, but that's like a blended approach. Like, that's probably the best of both worlds, because like, it's good to be disciplined, like, but now we stay in an age where we're constantly fed self-improvement through the screen, and it's like you said, you talked about hyper-discipline. Like, that's actually a thing nowadays, is being hyper-disciplined. If you go back 20 years ago before social media, nobody knew what fucking disciplined was. You just did things. But now people talk about this discipline because it gives them a sense of identity.
I
Like,
agree.
I'm disciplined. And it's like, right, well, I'm disciplined because I brush my teeth every night. I'm disciplined because I go to bed. Like, how define discipline? Like, discipline is just, it's too vague a term. You're disciplined with things in life, but if you're disciplined with everything, then you're going to lead a pretty fucking sad life. Let's be honest.
Yeah, there's also no perfect way to do things. So obviously, you have all these self improvement people that are like, wake up at 5 in the morning, have an ice bath, journal, and that's great. But then you have people like Jeff Bezos who wakes up at 9 in the morning, has a coffee, reads the newspaper, kind of just hangs out before he starts his day. And he's probably one of the smartest, most innovative people in the world. So there's
Yeah,
not like this blueprint that if you follow, you're going to be successful. Um, but if you really want to do that, go for it. But you also
yeah,
don't have to. Like, I don't
yeah.
wake up at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning. I'm not trying to because I don't have any interest in doing it, but I'm still hyper productive throughout my day.
Yeah. I think it's just like it's just became a dick measuring contest in some respects, where it's like, yeah, I get up at like 4 in the morning, then I light a gratitude candle, and then I just thank the creator for like the fact that like lavender smells beautiful.
It does smell beautiful.
And it just seems to me to be just trying to project something to people when reality is quite different. In fact, I would probably argue that you tend to find a lot of these disciplined guys that promote discipline probably are the most least disciplined people you'll ever meet, because your identity gets wrapped up in social media, so you need to like
Do it.
ramp it up. But we all know that social media is a smokescreen for what
Yeah,
really
and
goes
and
on
if you
behind the
wanna
curtain.
do things and you wanna be disciplined, I'm all for it. I'm disciplined in certain ways. I just might not be so vocal in how I'm disciplined, right? I don't
Yeah,
It's not about the routine or, what I'm doing first thing in the morning or that, I didn't have the birthday cake at my mom's birthday. Like, to me, that's not a sign of discipline.
yeah,
It's a potential lack of opportunity to connect with someone. Again,
yeah,
unless you're making a living off of it and you're super serious. But if you're a normal person that wants to be in better shape than 90, 95% of people, you can have that slice of cake and make your mom happy.
yeah. But like, what happens if you become too disciplined? Like, what happens if you're too disciplined? Are you leaving yourself open to like neurotic behavior? Because sometimes life throws a curveball. Sometimes shit does not go your way. So your discipline might have to take a back seat at times. And it ties into what I was speaking at the start of the conversation, which is like sometimes the gym's not going to always be there. And
Yeah,
you're going to have to deal with the voices in your head because your routine has been completely smashed. So you're potentially creating an environment by being hyper disciplined, but actually bringing more stress into your life when things don't go your way. So it's like almost like a controlling thing. It's like you're too much in control.
for sure. I think if you're listening and you're not disciplined, being disciplined is a good thing. But if you're neurotic about it, maybe reassess if you're being neurotic or if you're doing it for the identity and the social clout associated with it, or if you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah,
And the only person that knows that is yourself through
yeah,
self-reflection,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. No, that's a really good point. It's a really good point, Varun.
All right, man. So I'm gonna end things off today with kind of a fun question.
Oh, I love fun questions.
Is the breast is the best pre-workout still listening to Led Zeppelin while drinking some hot lava java?
Oh, it's definitely up there. It's definitely up there. Although I actually started buying pre-workout there. Like, I don't know why. I just had this notion to buy a pre-workout, and I did. And it was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I just found it's almost like you're taking drugs nowadays. You take a pre-workout and it's you feel like your head's about to like leave your shoulders. And I found that I was getting quite anxious while taking them. Like, I couldn't stay at peace, as we say in Scotland.
Yeah, when I was in
Well,
my 20s, we used to take this pre-workout Eno Explode, and it started off with one scoop, but within a few months, we were taking 3 scoops, and I was getting angry at red lights because I just wanted to get to the gym, and I was like, I can't take this anymore. I'll just stick to coffee in the morning.
I know it's like a destructive habit because, like you said, it starts off with one scoop. Next thing you know, it's 5 scoops twice a day. But this stuff, I was wired to the moon on this stuff. Like wired to the moon the first time I took it. I actually started researching pre-workouts because I thought I want to get, because I'm Scottish, right? See, when Scottish people do things, they want a kick. Like, we don't want light stuff. We want like the full whack, as they say. We want to go all in. So we don't go for the light stuff. So I'm looking up these pre-workouts. I'm researching meticulously for days before it, and I identify this one. Some of them you can't even buy in this country. You need to import them or something like that. And like, I'm reading the reviews and I'm like, Jesus, like, I'm watching these YouTube videos and it's these guys who just review pre-workouts, and they've got a look in their eye. Like, you can't really articulate it. They've got a look in their eye.
That's hilarious.
But in response to your question, yes, some 90s hip hop, a glass of iron brew, an omelette with cheese, cup of coffee,
And some good tunes.
some good tunes, some hip hop, and bit of DMX. DMX is always good pre-workout, and an electrolyte and sparkling water. That's how a Scotsman likes to start his day.
Awesome. Yeah, DMX is pretty awesome. Anyways,
Yeah.
on that note, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Sure, you can find me on YouTube, Strong and Conditioned, and you can also find me on Instagram as Strong and Conditioned. Those are the only two social media platforms I use. I tried TikTok, but it just wasn't for me. I couldn't get my head around it. It was too fast. I'm getting old.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. I really had fun.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.